Washed up on the shoreline and lying face down in the sand, it wasn't very long ago that he had learned to stand. The sea had stolen the chance of a life that his father hoped to find when he put his family's life at risk to escape the hands of those unkind. Hoping on a dream for a country far away, he stood there empty-handed with little left to say, except to let his family be the ones who could open eyes and maybe open the doors to those escaping a country full of lies. Only one of the many willing to risk it all for one escape, on oceans dark and dangerous, running from the wound of a mental rape. No guarantees of any success in a world that just pushed them back, unwilling to realize they'd risk their lives to escape all that they had lacked. And so it was his young son whose image would reach the hearts of many, but not before he'd lost all life and his hopes of a future hadn't any, and not before the same fate washed over his brother and his mother, and this father lost everything he'd loved and hadn't any other. The massive price of freedom that had left him empty-handed as he struggled to make it to shore in the country where he had landed. The dream of another life now irrelevant, buried in his family's graves, just three of so many others whose bid for freedom couldn't save. Running from a nightmare of gunfire and explosions, and a country so war-torn that its people's hearts are the victim of erosion. Images on the internet of children's faces in terror and despair, while angry youth scream their war cries as if they do not care. The innocents are victims in the mayhem of their violence, faces formed in screams, but they may as well scream into the silence as the war machine lumbers forward, crushing all beneath its feet. The fighters cannot see that this war is their defeat, that their bombs destroy their lands and their gunfire kills their people, that there are no excuses for war and all theirs are pretty feeble. There is no God in the broken streets where their children die alone, buried under the rubble of a city made of stone, until their people can't run fast enough to escape their country's war, and the world sees the picture of a little boy whose escape he would die for. Face down on a shoreline, his life cut short at the age of 3. He couldn't survive the passage, washed overboard in a raging sea. A tiny symbol of hopelessness that forced his family to take the chance, that ended in too many deaths of those lost in nothing but circumstance. An exodus of the innocent who had no doors that were left open, where far too many images of horror left behind not much for coping, where desperateness drove them forward to exchange one death for another, in a risky throw of the dice hastily made by a father or a mother, wishing on a dream and a hope for a better tomorrow, silently wringing their hands of the bloodshed and the sorrow, while the warmongers beat their drums of war to the machine gun's rat-tat-tat, and the gunman stares at the little puddle of blood that someone's child has spat. Someone runs across the street with a bleeding boy cradled against his chest. A young man lies lifeless on the ground. He was his high school's very best. The empty eyes of a mother stare into a place that cannot be seen. She's already traveled far away from the people with the war machine. There are no dreams on the battlefield, just the terror that made her run. And the last sound that she heard was from the killer's loaded gun. And a fight that she never wanted, that took the light from her eyes, and then silenced all the terror she heard coming from the children's frightened cries. Pictures we don't want to see, because the horror is far too huge. Yet still we balk at the idea of offering these families some refuge, until the body of a dead child on the shoreline doesn't allow us to look away, until we begin to understand how high a price these people have had to pay.